So let's talk about AWS Lambda versions, because as soon as you start working on Lambda functions and putting them in dev, test, prod, this is where functions and aliases, I will see in the next slide, are really, really important. So when you work on the function, you work on the version called latest, and that makes sense. The latest version is what you modify. And so latest is mutable. Mutable means that we can change it as we want. When we're ready to publish this function, when we are happy with the state of this function, we can publish it and create a version. So the first version we create will be v1, for example, and that version is immutable. That means that the v1, we cannot change it ever. It's a snapshot. And versions get increasing version numbers. So after v1, we will have v2. Now the versions, each of them will get their own ARN. ARN is Amazon resource name. So that means we're able to address either v1 or v2 or latest based on different ARNs. And the version is the code itself and the configuration. So environment variables, timeouts, etc. Nothing can be changed. Everything is immutable. And so each version of the Lambda function, including latest, can be accessed whenever you want using the correct ARN. So in our workflow, when we work and we're happy with a state of a Lambda function, we say, okay, we're going to snapshot latest and we're going to create a new version out of it. Why would we do this? Well, we create versions in order to have a dev environment, a test environment, and a prod environment, right? But so if we have new versions of the time, we have to rewire everything in dev, test, prod all the time, and that may be super painful. Instead, we can use Lambda aliases. And so aliases are pointers to Lambda function versions. So versions were immutable and aliases are not. So we can define, for example, a dev, test, and prod alias, and we point them to different Lambda versions, and we can change these pointers over time because they're mutable. So here is our latest Lambda function version. It's mutable, but we also have v1 and v2. Now we can create a dev alias, which represents our development environment, which most likely we want to point at the latest function we have. So we'll point the dev alias to latest. Now our users, when they interact with our function, they don't directly interact with the latest version, they interact with the dev alias. Now we also have a test alias maybe, and we're actually testing our v2 of our function. So the test alias may point to the v2. And maybe we have a prod function, and the prod alias is going to point directly to v1. So as you can see, all the aliases are mutable, whereas the versions are immutable. And so if we want to do blue-green deployment or update our prod environment to migrate it from v1 to v2 because it turns out it was great, we can do a deployment and assign weights. So we can say the prod alias, 95% of this is going to point to v1 and 5% of it is going to point to v2. This way we're going to test with a little bit of traffic how the v2 function is doing. And so using this, we can do blue-green deployments. Our users don't know what's happening at all because the only thing they interact with is the aliases. So for the users, nothing changes. And so we're able to iterate basically in the backend while providing a stable configuration for our users, our event triggers, and our destinations. So we can change all we want and rewire the aliases to functions, but for the users, the endpoints are the same. And that's because aliases will have their own ARN. So I hope that makes sense. We will go right now into a hands-on, probably to give it a bit more clarity. Okay, so we are in our hello world function. And as we can see, we have qualifiers, and these are versions and aliases. In terms of versions, we've been working with latest since we started. So here's the latest version, and that's the one we can edit. And aliases, we don't have any. So basically, nothing shows up right here. So let's go ahead and create an action, and we're going to publish a new version. Now this is our first version, so I'll just say the description is first version and click on publish. So this takes the snapshot and makes it version 1. So version 1 of our function is set in stone. This is hello world version 1, and it can talk to the CloudWatch logs, to SQS, and if we scroll down, we can see that we can look at our function code, looks great, but we cannot edit anything. If I just type, I cannot delete anything. I cannot change anything. If I scroll down, I can see my environment variables are set in stone. so is my tag, so is the execution role, the basic setting. Everything right here is set in stone. I cannot change anything. So version 1 is immutable. Now what if I want to have version 2? I go back and click on latest, and in latest I'm able to modify stuff. So maybe I want to change and say, okay, we're going to delete a few stuff, and I'm going to say new value 1, whatever. We'll just change the code a little bit to make it a new version. So this is version 2, right? And maybe I want to remove this environment variable, and then I'll click on save. So now our latest function has different code. So I'll go and say, okay, this is my new code. I'm going to promote it. So I'll say action, publish new version, and this is second version, right? We have updated it. So I'll say publish, and now we have version 2. So now we're able to switch between version 2, version 1, and latest. And if you look at version 2, this is the code. It has some new code in it, and it has no more environment variables. And if we look at version 1, we basically go back in time and we see the old function code, and we also see the old environment variables. So now we have 3 versions of our function: latest, version 1, and version 2. And so as we go around and iterate on our latest code, and as we add and change stuff, we're going to increment the version, and that may be a lot of different versions. What we want to expose to our user is a dev, test, and prod endpoints, and ARN. So we'll click on aliases, and as you can see, there is nothing. So we'll click on action, create alias. Now we are able to create an alias, and an alias is a pointer to 1 or 2 versions. So we'll create the dev alias, and it says, we'll just won't provide description, we'll just say dev, and the version we're pointing to is latest. That's just me choosing that my dev environment should always point to latest. And now I'll click on create. So now it says an alias dev was successfully created, and now it's pointing to the version latest. If we look at the ARN, we can see on the top right that we have the hello world dev alias pointing to, if we go back, go below, to the version latest. So now we're able to manage the life cycle of this dev thing. Now let's do a prod one. So we're going to create an alias, and this is going to be our prod alias. And the version it's pointing to right now is version 1. We'll create. So now we have our prod alias pointing to version 1 and our dev alias pointing to version latest, whereas we're running 3 different versions of our function. So we could go on and on, but so it turns out that prod is running for version 1, and our website has been running with this prod alias for a while, right? And now we want to update prod to version 2. Okay, so what we do is we go to the alias and we're going to modify the settings. Now we could go ahead and just click on 2, and that would be a bit brutal. That would just update all the prod traffic and send it straight to version 2. But that's not what we want to do. We just want to test a little bit. We want to shift traffic between 2 versions. So I'm going to say, okay, you can run version 1, and additionally, you're going to run version 2. And maybe we want to have 5% in terms of weight. So 5% of the traffic is going to go to version 2, while 95% of our traffic is going to go to version 1. Just to show you, I'm just going to do 50-50 just to show you how things work. So we have 50% on version 1, 50% on version 2. Now I click on save. And so my prod environment is now pointing to 2 Lambda function versions. If I test it, we can see the first result, and we get new value equals 1. So this is our function version 2 that was running. And if I test it again and again, basically we see that now the Lambda function that is running is the version 1. So we get an idea that by just invoking hello world prod as many times as we want, we're basically routing to version 2 and version 1 of our code. And so we've been testing and we figured out, okay, version 2 is healthy, it's working great. So what I'm going to do is update my alias to version 2, and we won't set any additional version. This way, all my traffic is going to go to version 2 now. I'll click on save, and now I basically promoted my code to production, and every time I run my function, I get the version 2 being invoked. And so that's how you can manage your alias independently from your versions. So I hope this little hands-on made you understand the difference between versions and aliases. You can reroute alias to any versions, but versions are immutable. And so this is how you manage your dev, test, prod traffic, and the exam really loves these kinds of questions. So I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next lecture.